And the more we help kids become kind and compassionate and empathetic, the more of those kinds of people they'll grow up to be. So that's why writing for kids is important, right? You want those kind, generous, competent, scientifically competent people out there running the world because we need them.
Welcome to another You May Contribute a Verse. I'm Josh Munkin alongside my co-host and old buddy Brenna Jennerette for a second conversation with author Jilanne Hofmann, who is probably the best way that I can describe her is thoughtful. She's thoughtful about a lot of things, empathy and connection with her kid audience, primary and foremost among them, along with research and scientific excellence and competence and really diligence and thoughtfulness, and just being, probably most importantly, the epitome of a pleasant person to talk to, which is exactly why we were happy to have her back on the show. But first, a word from our sponsor, Tealmore. Tealmore Press is our sponsor, and I would like to, for this shout-out, highlight the picture book coming up that looks is keeping with the nature theme and the connection to the world theme. So this is Enough to Share by Mary Helen Berg and illustrated by Sue Todd. Check out Enough to Share, which comes out in April 2026, alongside all other Tealmore books at tealmorepress.com. And now, with no further ado, here is Jilanne Hofmann's verse.
There's a...
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, the picture book is coming out in March. And that one, the little bow is tied up and everything is lovely.
It's good, yeah.
And Khoa's art is just, you know, her work. It's just, her work is drop dead gorgeous. So
yeah,
it's super excited about that.
We get to see Ocean's Heart and see firsthand how awesome
it's
it is.
Very
send
like,
you guys the art.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very like dreamy and sort of, yeah, she captures it perfectly.
Yeah.
There couldn't have been a better pairing. But wait, before we get too far into that, I just want to sort of like
let's talk more sewer.
Well, right. No, I want to compare and contrast like how quickly like these different deadlines, because it's the novel in verse, right? It's so what I'm getting at, I guess, is I'm trying to, for my own writing career, sort of like zoom out for what it is that's like, you know, because you're at the line edit stage, right? So presumably that's very close to the finish line. But because it's such a longer work, it feels like there's still a lot of work. But if you're at line edits for a picture book, you know, that's much quicker. And it's sort of like, oh, okay, this is like, I could do this in an afternoon. Yes. But with a longer work, it's just like, wow. And I think that for me is like the essence of my question for you. You know, how do you go back and forth between those two? Because having a picture book come out and a novel in verse almost back to back, those are very different thought processes you have to be in.
It definitely uses different parts of my brain. And I have to say, and also in the middle, there's a chapter book that I wrote for Core Knowledge, which is a educational publisher, and they're amazing to work with. I love them, and that is a book about a couple of orphan kids during the gold rush in San Francisco, and so I wrote that in the middle of waiting for other edits to come through on the novel. And on the picture book. So I was doing a picture book, a chapter book, and a novel all at the same time, and kind of interweaving all of the tasks, because sometimes the picture book would come through with, what do you think of this cover? In the middle of working on edits for the chapter book, you know, and so your brain has to kind of like shut off that little box, put it away, and then open up a different box and get into that mindset and really pay attention, I guess, to what's going on in this particular box and not worry about what's going on in the other box. So you have to really be able to, I think, at least this is me, compartmentalize, right? And while you're in one compartment, the other one is not there. It's non-existent.
So just like quick, like follow up. So how do you like keep from getting overwhelmed, I guess? Because with the longer works, right? It's like I have a hard time. I can draft them, but then I have a hard time going back in, and revisions tend to sort of like swallow me up because I just am like, okay, I'm making a note over here. I have to follow this thread through to this thing, and these have to connect. And in a picture book, it's like, okay, let me scroll up real quick, do the change, fix it down here, like whatever. So following that thread through all the way has been, I think, the thing that has sort of thwarted me. I just am like sort of stopped by pulling the thread through and then not getting knocked off that thread by something else that I also have to fix. Do you have any like tricks, or how do you do that?
Tricks.
Tell me, Jilanne, I need your help. I need your guidance.
Okay, let me just say that when I got the first edits, not I should say the first what she wanted to call line edits, and they were more than what I expected for line edits, because there was still a little bit of developmental stuff happening in the middle of the line edits while we were also cutting. This novel was once, the editor didn't see it at this stage, it was 109,000 words.
Your novel in verse.
Novel in
was
verse.
109,000
words.
More like novel in universe.
It's a middle grade, okay?
Well done.
Yikes.
So,
so you had to cut a lot.
Yes, because now it's down to 74,000. And for a middle grade, that's still really long, especially
for novel and verse, or for prose, actually.
Okay.
I mean,
yes, it's prose and verse, because
that's right. I forgot.
It's two separate timelines. One is historical, and it's hard to believe that the 1980s is historical, but
I know it's rude, is what it is.
It's my childhood. One is in the 1980s and one is in 2023. So, and those two, there's a mother who was alive during the 80s as a child who now has a daughter that is the age that she was during her timeline, right? Okay. And I weave those two timelines together. So you were asking if there's any tricks.
Yes.
First you cry.
Okay. Hold on, let me write that down.
You get your edits back and you cry. Or you get really angry because no one gets what you're doing. And then you kind of go through the stage of denial. And so you have all these levels of grief, right? That you have to work your way through. And then you realize that your editor might not be wrong. And
been there.
And then you start to get to work, and you just take it, as Anne Lamott says, the bird by bird piece, looking at the edits and deciding which ones you agree with, if you do it a different way than what your editor is suggesting, because those are just suggestions, right? If you think you can deal with it in a different way, you do those. Then there are those that require a tremendous amount of deep thinking, because you might need to, in a novel, it has a ripple effect, especially through dual timelines that depend on what each other are doing.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's a timey-wimey thing happening where you're time traveling through your own work.
Yes.
To affect the future.
And the novel has some jokes in it about time travel, because the girl who ends up reading a piece of her mother's diary from when she was her age that has been hidden away, squirreled away. She does feel like she's time traveling to discover this person who is no longer the person that she has as a mother, right? And figuring out who that girl is, how they have similarities and differences, and then reconciling with the mother at the end. But there's a father who's missing in there, and all sorts of shenanigans happen with the father as the girl finds him, that kind of thing. Anyway,
I expressed this.
How many books are we going to talk about today?
All of the books.
2, for sure, in depth. But I expressed this to you via email as we were working up to this. But you have written what I anticipate to be the perfect book for my oldest daughter. There's different time periods. There's history. There's mother-daughter connection. There's diaries and time travel mentions. And super cool. I'm very excited for your book.
Same.
And it's set in Iowa. And there's the setting, the backdrop of an environmental cover-up. Because Iowa, being what Iowa is, it has a large environmental problem that no one wants to address or talk about. And so that is also kind of this current that runs through the book. In fact, I have an expert right now who's reviewing the manuscript. He's a hydrology expert who used to work at the University of Iowa. He has a PhD in chemistry, and he's reviewing all of the kind of little technical things that get kind of tossed out during the course of the narrative to make sure that it's accurate and not setting kids up for thinking that this kind of thing happens when it doesn't really happen. So, yeah.
I'm assuming that the environmental problem you're talking about is not corn sweat.
It is not corn sweat, no.
Which is a term that I have recently learned and I find very fascinating.
Corn is so interesting because I grew up in Illinois, and the corn of my youth is not the corn of today. It looks very different than the corn of my youth. It's planted very differently. And so whenever I drive by, in fact, when we drove down to LA to drop off our son, and there's sweet corn growing next to the highway it looks like, it's very strange to look at it because it used to have these long droopy leaves that would shimmer in the wind. And now it stands, the stalks are planted very close together. I think there might even be like 4 inches between them. It used to be a foot. They're close together. Their leaves are now designed to stretch straight up or almost straight up toward the sky. There's very little shimmer. Very different. Agriculture is very different. It has changed significantly. I'm a little worried that this book is going to get banned in Iowa just because the ag industry is so powerful. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know, but the mother has gone the way of organic farming and all of the little side hustles that go with having an organic farm to make it all work. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens once it comes out. But this hydrology guy, Chris Jones, he wrote The Swine Republic, and it's a compilation of a lot of his posts about what's going wrong with ag and water quality and that kind of thing. So yeah, good stuff, baby.
Two things. Tell us the name of that book, the novel in verse and prose.
Okay, should we start now?
Yes, start.
We started more than 10 minutes ago, Jill.
The novel in verse is called HeartLand, and
that's right.
The L is capitalized in addition to the H being capitalized, so it's the land of the heart. So that's the title of the novel, and I have seen the cover. And the cover is amazing. I can't wait to show it to people.
And we've seen it too, and it's amazing.
We have, yeah.
And so he's really, and he's done a map. There's a map of the 1980s farm, and then a map of the 2023 farm, and the CAFO, the containment area for bad piggies. I did name the company Porca Miseria, and that means pig's misery in Italian.
Oh.
And the editor hasn't said anything about taking that out, changing the name. So I'm going full speed ahead with that name. So where was I? The cover art. And Khoa's cover art for The Ocean's Heart. There's a lot of heart in both of these books. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, I thought you did that by design.
Yeah, I did that by design. Yeah, both of the covers are gorgeous. We originally thought that we might be doing spot art in the novel, but I don't think we have enough space to do that. I did just see a little sketch that he did for the jacket flap, which is really sweet. There's a merino sheep looking up at Zyla, who is the main character of the 2023 timeline, looking up at her reading her mother's diary on a bale of hay in the barn.
That's sweet.
It's the sheep. If you could see the face of the sheep is looking at her with so much hope. I see that as a metaphor for the farm and how much the farm hopes that Zyla will come to love it as much as her mother loves the farm. And so let me tell you, there's voices. There are other voices in this novel. So there's the voice of time. Time gets its own poems. The voice of weather. Weather gets its own poems. And the voice of the farm that gets its own poems. And the farm speaks to both the mother during the diary period and the daughter during the current day period. So there are those what are called interstitials in between the prose sections and the main verse sections.
You really took the notion of writing from the perspective of dust and up-leveled it, I suppose.
Yeah. And to me, though, and this is a funny thing, I feel like these things speak to us if we just listen. And so it feels very natural for me to take on the persona of those, what we think of as things, but I feel like they're really alive around us. Everything is alive if we just pay attention, I think. So it's not something that is a forced, an affect, I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. I actually am.
Or just used as like a literary device. It's a real connection, representing a real connection. Super cool. Yeah. How much of, I want to stay on HeartLand for a little bit, because there's a lot going on in this book, it seems like, without having read it, but how much of it did you feel as though you could write from lived experience versus how much you leveraged your engineering and science communication research background to do legitimate research to support the book?
Everything from the 1980s was lived. And when the farm crisis, and there's an amazing book out by Lindsay Metcalf that is a picture book, but it's for older kids. What is it called? I had it written down here somewhere because I wanted to mention it. God, where is it at? I've got her two books that are the other books that are mentioned in there. No Voice Too Small and No World Too Big. What's it called? Farmers Unite. It's called Farmers Unite. And it's about the farm crisis that drove many farmers to suicide. Lots of farmers, their farms went to auction. It was just disastrous. And for kids or teachers or parents who want kids to know about the history of that time period and just how severe life was, that's a great book to take out. So it's called Farmers Unite. And it was all, do you guys remember? I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember when the farmers drove their tractors to Washington, D.C., and they kind of took over Washington, D.C. with tractors to protest. And originally it was during the winter, of course, because farmers' tractors were a little bit more idle during the winter, right? Mm. There was a point where D.C. got snowed in, and all of the citizens of D.C. were really ticked off because there were so many tractors snarling traffic until all of the farmers started helping pull people out of snowdrifts, right? And then suddenly the farmers were heroes. But that's part of what she talks about in the book, is this march on Washington, or this drive on Washington, I guess, to try to get fair farm prices, grain prices especially. Anyway, where was I going with that?
Historical research, lived experience.
Yeah, historical research. That part I felt very solid in. And I also had it reviewed by a researcher, an Iowa historian. And she said that the original novel in verse, it was just originally a single timeline novel in verse, historical only, when I first wrote it. And she reviewed it. She said it reminded her of Out of the Dust by Karen Hess, which was a book about the Dust Bowl and the strife of one particular farm family during that time. That book was really, excuse me, I felt more harsh, and that there are some really horrific things that happen in that book, and it's more graphic with respect to the mother who gets like flaming kerosene accidentally thrown on her, and she pretty much burns to death.
Oh my gosh.
Out in the middle of farm country. So that is a harsh book, and they eat the dust. You know, when they have a meal, they turn their plates and cups over so that it doesn't start to fill up before they start eating. And then they turn everything over, they eat, but they're still eating. There's so much dust in the air. It just infiltrates everything. So she said it reminded her of that book, Out of the Dust. And it was very funny that when they put the marketing copy together for this book, they said it was Out of the Dust, Marvin Gardens. And Marvin Gardens is a book by A.S. King, who it has fantastic elements, but it's about the environment and about a farm, a contemporary farm. So I thought it was very funny that I had never mentioned Out of the Dust to them, but they had picked up on that there are similarities, because there is a drought that happens and did happen during the 88-89 period that significantly affects the farm. And weather actually talks about that, about how weather doesn't care. Weather is weather, and it will do what it wants, when it wants, how it wants, and you just have to live with it. And you should know it's not personal. Nothing is personal, right? So
I love that.
So as far as the contemporary line, because it's an organic farm, I have friends who are organic farmers, and I had some deep discussions with them. And I also talked with them about high tunnel farming, which is what this organic farm is high tunnels. You see the hoop tunnels that are laid out in rows, and sometimes they actually have tracks that can slide down the field. So depending on whatever crop you have planted for a given length, you can roll the tunnel down the tracks, and then plant. If you're done with a crop in a certain area, you can plant a cover crop that enriches the soil with nitrogen rather than spraying ammonia into the soil. And that's another aspect of the historical timeline, are the types of things that the farmer uses to enrich the soil with nitrogen, and he accidentally sprays himself with liquid nitrogen, which has the ability to burn your skin off, blind you, make your lungs kind of stop working. Farming, one of the themes that runs through the novel is farm things happen. And a lot of those farm things are not good things. My brother used to teach a farm safety class, and funnily enough, he has sprayed himself with liquid nitrogen, and he has also almost cut off his thumb. And there is a place in the novel where something really bad happens to the father of her best friend and causes them to leave the farm and move away. So there is tragedy, but there is hope. And when you write middle grade, there will always be hope. One must end with hope, because if one doesn't, no one wants to read the book, and no one wants to kind of stay alive to see what happens, you know?
Right.
Save the tragedy for adults. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Like for middle graders, right? Like you still want to kind of foster that, like, there, you know, you can do something. You can actually like you can
Yes.
make a change, right? Like you can't end with the doom and gloom, or it's like, well, you've extinguished that whole like spark, that you've worked the entire novel trying to cultivate. So
Yes.
yeah,
Exactly. And I have to say, I can't do YA dystopian. It's too harsh for me. I feel like, oh, this is where we're going and this is just horrific, and I don't want to face that. And I have to say that both of these books, like with the Ocean's Heart, I want kids to feel the beauty, the exquisite gloriousness. It's like a religious experience to see these creatures doing what they're doing in the ocean. And if you want to see them in action, the Monterey Bay Research Institute has the most amazing online videos. Kids can just go crazy watching these videos that are so amazing. And it's called Blackwater photography, right? My expert from the aquarium, who's a marine biologist, he actually has a book coming out from Abrams in September, which will be long past when this comes out, called The Radiant Sea. His photography is just, it's like I bow down to anybody that can make these exquisite photographs. But he reviewed all the stuff that Khoa did, and Khoa, she relied so much on all of these images from the aquarium to make sure that all of the creatures that she depicts that are swimming around in the Monterey Bay, that they are scientifically accurate. And he reviewed it like 3 or 4 times to make sure, saying, oh, those tentacle pods aren't exactly right. You need to do this and this and this to them. That, wow. As far as research, Josh, I think I'm used to doing research, and all of my books, I don't think I have done a book yet that hasn't required, in fact, like the Gold Rush, the reason why I could write the Gold Rush book was because I'm doing research about San Francisco, and part of it happens during that time period for a novel that I want to write this coming November. So I had all this in my pockets. And when they asked if I could write a historical fiction novel, or not novel, chapter book about something, and the Gold Rush wasn't on their list, I suggested I could do one about the Gold Rush. And they said, sure, we'd love it, right? And so I already had all this research done so that I could actually start plotting out that story in pretty short order. All I had to think about was, what if there were a brother and a sister who were orphaned during that time? What would their life be like? It would be really awful.
Spoiler, it'd be terrible.
But there's hope. There's always hope. And they do have a bit of excitement along the way as far as having fun, of course. But there are the stark reality of what it was like being an orphan during that time and not having a parent to watch over you. You kind of rely on the kindness of strangers. And people are kind. You find the kind people and things can work out,
Hey, let's take a quick break for a couple of book reviews. The first one, we didn't plan it this way, but we switched around the publication order, and this is how it worked out. Brenna's review for this week is for The Ocean's Heart, which is by Jilanne, about which we have been talking on this episode. Again, The Ocean's Heart, The Tiny Creature's Essential to Life, by friend of the pod, Jilanne Hofmann, and just calling it, illustrated by Khoa. Beautiful, lyrical, and packed with kid-friendly information. Yes, please. Those illustrations knock it out of the park. This is a book that belongs on every bookshelf. And my review is brought to you courtesy of being out of town for spring break and relying on picture book ebooks for a few days that were in the little hopper. Margo Sorenson's, who's also been on the pod several years ago, Margo Sorenson's 2020 book, Calvin Gets the Last Word, illustrated by Mike Deas, is maybe the only picture book written from the perspective of a dictionary that I can think of, but she pulls it off. The dimensions of the family dynamic, nerdiness, school chaos, friends, and sibling rivalry are layered so well through the lens of Calvin pushing the boundaries of language, complemented by Mike Deas' very adorable Calvin and Hobbes style comic illustrations It's easy to see this picture book being the entry point for a lot of different types of conversations between kids and their grown-ups. Lastly, to note, how in the heck has it been 6 years since 2020? I'm just flabbergasted by the passage of time. And check out everything that we have to offer you with the podcast and merch and all the other things at verse.show or linktree.com/verseshow. And now, without further ado, back to our conversation with Jilanne.
You can get so polarized feeling like, oh, everybody's terrible. Like, how could this have happened? You know, like, I can't trust anybody. Like, that's kind of how it feels. But that's not entirely true. Yeah, like, I mean, all the people I know personally are kind people, would help, you know, take you in if you needed. So it's, like, important to remember that is, people are still very kind and compassionate and empathetic and all of the things. It's just, yeah.
Yes. And the more we help kids become kind and compassionate and empathetic, the more of those kinds of people they'll grow up to be. So that's why writing for kids is important, right? You want those kind, generous, competent, scientifically competent people out there running the world because we need them.
In the last couple of minutes, you have teed up a lot to pull apart.
So much. I see Josh over there doing his tell. Like he's got questions.
I'm not in the business of interrupting when we're talking about good stuff. But so I don't think we've acknowledged, as long as we've been talking already, for those who have missed it, I mean, we talked basically 2 years ago.
Yes.
And to me, it's interesting. I don't know if you, Jill, went back and re-listened to our first conversation. First of all, it was interesting to go back and re-listen to all of us talking at 1.5 speed. A very energetic conversation. But second of all, to be able to go back and revisit, like in the context of this conversation, where you were in the journey of these books that are now coming to life 2 years ago, because we talked about the verse novel and the challenges that you were having placing something set in the 80s at that time. Clearly it worked out. Clearly it worked out. But that, I mean, let's do that. I think we've got a sense for how it's changed, but what was behind the change, and to you, what was the key that unlocked HeartLand working and finding a home?
Also, just because you're going to be thinking about Josh's question, I just want to slide in there because I have questions about that too. The revision process overall, because we touched on it at the beginning of the episode, but yeah, what unlocked it for you? But then also, because I know it was just the 80s, it was just a historical, and you had to go back in and tie it to present day because historical was not selling. So how did you go about doing that? Like what? Because that's a lot more material, a lot of threads. So yeah, all of those things. Talk about all of that.
It's basically writing another book and then weaving two books together, right? So that's basically what it is. That's all it is. Okay, next question.
Easy. Okay, great. Josh, what's on your list going forward?
No big deal.
Oh God, my gosh, yeah.
Who made that happen? Did you realize something about what it was that needed a different perspective?
Well, first off, when they came back to me, they asked me to set it in a current daytime period. That's all they said. Set it in a current daytime period. And I felt very strongly that the story from the 1980s needed to be told. I couldn't just say, oh, scrap that, I'll write the story from the 2023 perspective. I could not do that. I could not live with myself if I just tossed that whole historical piece that kids know absolutely nothing about, right? I couldn't lose that. So I said no. And some of my critique partners were like, what, are you crazy? They'll buy the book. Right? They'll buy the book if you just do that. That's all you got to do.
You got to sell your soul, essentially, right? It's like it's not worth it, right?
No, I couldn't live with. I couldn't go to sleep at night knowing I did that. So I said no. And my agent, to her credit, she was like, "I think you're doing the right thing because you feel very strongly about it." She didn't pressure me. And so I really respect her for that. So I started working on other things, and I don't know. It was months later that my agent came back to me and said, Jill, I've been talking to a friend of mine about the novel, and she was suggesting that maybe if you weave a contemporary thread with a historical thread, that might be something that the publisher would be interested in. Would that be of interest to you? And I said, well, let me think about it. And I did, and I started researching what's going on in Iowa now, and with the hog farming. And I was just horrified, absolutely horrified. And hog farming everywhere, not just Iowa, but hog farming in general is so unnatural and so bad for the environment and so bad for the pigs. It's bad all the way around. About the only good thing about it that comes out of it is cheap pork, right? You get cheap pork. Everyone wants cheap pork. So I felt so strongly about that. That really started to kind of get my juices, I guess you could say, flowing, my creative juices flowing. And I thought, well, if I have like this CAFO that then I sit next to the farm that has now, it's changed so much. It's gone organic. And I had, in the historical novel, I had them going to a more natural way of farming back in the 80s, because that actually was starting back then. And so what is that farm now versus this CAFO, and why would the CAFO be there? And all of these things started happening in my head. And so I went back to my agent and I said, I can do this. And she said, write a synopsis. So I fleshed out a skeleton of a story and wrote the synopsis, and she sent it to the editor. And the editor was like, I'm so excited to see this in my inbox. I'm so excited. And she got it through acquisitions before I had ever written the book. Okay.
On just a synopsis.
On just the synopsis.
Wow. And how long was the synopsis? Like, what did that look like? Like, how, I sort of want to just highlight.
Words.
Right, no. Right. I just want to highlight, what that looks like, because, so just to preface, Jilanne, I'm coming off of, I just got back from Highlights to do a novel in verse retreat. And so I'm very much in this.
Isn't that an amazing place?
It was amazing. But I'm very much in this headspace about like, okay, I know what's going wrong with my novel in verse, or not wrong, but I know what I need to add. I know the things I need to like put in there to sort of like get it over the finish line or to take it to the next step. So I'm in this place where I'm like, how do I, like I was saying, how do I add these layers without getting swallowed up by being overwhelmed? So it sounds like you broke it down, you wrote your synopsis. So I'm very curious, what did that look like? Was it sort of like an outline of, not chapter by chapter because it's verse, but like, what did it look like is my question. How did that go?
It looked like a very high level. It was approximately a half a page.
That's it. Okay.
With a little bit of background on my qualifications for being able to write the book. But the synopsis had the main character, the best friend, the mother, and the shadow father in it, and that's it.
And that's it. And then maybe like a pitch, like a couple of lines of like, this is what the story is about.
Yeah.
Whole lines about how outraged you are at the state of agriculture.
Yeah, right,
yes.
right.
Yes. My hackles go up immediately when I talk about big ag. And because there are amazing farmers out there, especially small farmers, who are working their butts off trying to earn a living and trying to do it the right way. And there's a growing number of them, and I respect them so much. It is ag industry that I would like to hang out to dry, actually. The chemical companies who want to push chemicals. Sorry, but it's it's a thing. And I have so many relatives living in farm country, and I know that Iowa has one of the highest rates of cancer in the country, and that green bucolic countryside, there it hides like blue velvet. Do you remember Blue Velvet, the movie where there's the 4th of July parade and everybody's waving and smiling and everything looks lovely, and then the camera zooms in to the ground, the grass, and in it the insects that are, it's like this world that's hidden, right? I think there's a lot that's actually hidden in plain sight in Iowa that ag industry does not want to deal with. They just want to use for their own purposes. And the people of Iowa suffer as a result. The kids suffer as a result. So, yeah. But back to the synopsis. It was very short. I wrote it to maintain a very high level of tension between the mother and daughter who are butting heads, because the daughter hates living on the farm. The mother thinks the farm is everything. This shadow father who the daughter is certain he left because the mother thinks that the farm is everything and why bother with him? So he just took off, and he left her there in misery to work for her mother. Right? So that high level of tension between all of the players, the friend whose own personal tragedy causes him to disappear, and then a new friend moves in, and that new friend and her family is what brings hope into this really traumatic situation. So yeah, and there's that, and then there's a new friend that moves in the current day situation that brings hope. And there's also a layer of unionization and anti-union activity at the pork processing plant, and Starbucks unionizing, and so that there's a whole unionization layer. This novel has a lot of layers, and it was really funny when they came back and said, we're writing the marketing copy and we're having a really hard time distilling the essence of the book into 200 words because there are so many layers to it. And I think that they did a decent job. But you have to, when you write a synopsis, you have to leave 99% of everything out and only go with those key emotional ties, right? That the whole novel kind of twists around. Like this whole environmental thing is just the backdrop, right? It's part of it. It causes what happens throughout the story. There's food poisoning, there's E. coli poisoning, there's an assortment of other things. And kids, the empowerment of kids. The two friends at the end, they are working to develop a case where the kids sue, right, the state of Iowa for violating their rights to clean water, to have access to clean water. And kids around the country right now are doing just that. They are being empowered to sue for clean air, clean water, you name it. Yeah. And that's why I mentioned the Swine Republic, and then the books by Lindsay Metcalf, Keela Dawson, illustrated by Jeanette Bradley, who have a bunch of authors writing poems about real kids doing real things to improve the environment or speak up politically, what have you. Kids have a voice and they're using it. And that is super exciting. And so these two kids are like, adults aren't doing anything. Adults are just sitting around saying, well, it is what it is. But no, you have to take a stand and try to make things better. And this mom is trying to make things better through her organic farm. And these kids then decide, well, we have to take it a step further. We have to get the legal action involved. And oftentimes that kind of thing is the only thing that moves the needle, right? So, yeah.
I can understand why they might have had trouble summing this up in 200 words. You have a lot going on.
Yeah. So weaving those things, when I went back to write the second story, I looked at what was already existing in the verse novel, and then I did my best to incorporate lots of parallels and the current day so that they would resonate with each other. Like, do you remember Tank Man? There's this famous photo of the Tiananmen Square massacre. There's a man called Tank Man. He's unknown. No one knows who he is, at least in this country. And there's a picture of him. He's wearing a white shirt, and he's standing in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square to stop the tanks. He is the only person in this picture, and it's an iconic photo. And if you Google it, you'll find it in Wikipedia, and it's called Tank Man. And he's doing it to stop his government, right, from killing everybody, killing their own people. And so there's this parallel. I have this in the 1989. There's a poem about Tank Man, and she sees this image of Tank Man on the news, and she thinks about Tank Man. And then later in the story, when they go to bulldoze an orchard to get rid of the trees so that they can plant more corn, she wraps herself around a tree in front of the bulldozer to stop the bulldozer, right? But at that point in the story, she can't do anything. Her friend rips her away from the tree because the bulldozer guy is like, "Are your parents home?" You know, that kind of thing. And so she's thwarted in her effort at saving the orchard. And so in the current day period, you now have this mom who is doing organic farming, and she sees that as her way of combating what's going on, right? And her daughter, who has read her diary and seen that, saying, "Well, you're just like Tank Man. You're just one person. You know, that you can't do anything." And she said, "Well, if there are a lot of Tank Mans, you can do something, right?" And it makes me cry just to think about it, because when you get people together, when you get them working together to stop something bad, you know, it's so emotionally cathartic because you're doing something and you're successful in what you are doing to save whatever is precious on this planet. You know, nothing is more important than that, right? But then working together for good. I'm gonna cry. So I really feel that. And so when I write, I think about that. And so there are all of these things that I had bounced back and forth between the two narratives. And the market being what it is, they want short books for middle graders because of COVID and reading levels and that. And when you have dual narratives, that's really hard to do. There are books like The Lost Year, which was an amazing book. That's like in the 80s. It's all prose. The Blackbird Girls, which was another historical multi-timeline, that's in the 70s. So I looked at all of these books with historical time and contemporary timelines, and I'm like, well, I'm not off now that I'm in this, now that I've got it edited down. But they're still concerned that the current market, it's going to be too intimidating. So when I read her email this morning, she said, you know, I've got a few more ideas about little places where we can cut. My heart is already broken in that I have to cut more, because every time I cut, I lose little pieces that resonate between the timelines. And I work so hard to put those resonating pieces in, and then to have to slowly remove them, and think about where the ripple effect is throughout the story and make those adjustments throughout the story. That's really hard. It's very emotionally hard.
Yeah.
What keeps me wanting to do it is wanting both of these stories to be told and wanting kids to feel empowered and knowing that there are things that they can do right now to keep themselves from feeling like all is lost, all is hopeless, the world is just going to pieces and there's nothing that we can do. You can't allow yourself to think that way. And the more research that I do, the more I know of the good people who are working like crazy to keep that from happening. And they just need help, right?
Yeah.
So we need to give them as much help as we can.
I mean, that sentiment, like all of that comes through in all of your books. Like they are all so based in, trying to do the right thing and pass on, information, like very much laced with hope, with this is what we can do. These are the things that we're working for. I mean, that is your voice. If I had to sum it up, if I saw one of your books on the shelf, I'd be like, oh, that's what I'm getting from Jilanne. Like those are her. That's what your stuff feels like.
Knowledge is power. Knowledge is hope. Enables you to move through the world better.
Yes. And knowledge gives you the tools to do something,
Right. Yeah.
Knowing is not enough. You need to do something. And that's why I keep going back to these two books by Lindsay Metcalf and Keela Dawson and Jeanette Bradley. No Voice Too Small, No World Too Big. Because those kids, all of the kids that are profiled in those books are doing things. And it's so inspiring to see them and see that they're achieving their goals, right? It's not enough just to know history and to be aware of what's going on now. It's the doing that gets things done, right?
Right. Yeah. Well said.
And it was so funny that, like, my husband, when we went to Maine just for a very brief break after I turned in my this last edit, I was like, I gotta go away. I need a break. And so we went to Maine, and one of his cousins is a marine biologist who's working on studying plankton and how plankton absorb carbon and how we can better understand how the ocean not just absorbs carbon, but recycles minerals. I mean, it's just, he's working on that. And so he's actually, I think, in Greenland right now doing something. So there are people out there doing stuff, and we need more kids out there doing stuff. And I want them to be excited about it, and I want them to love the ocean, and I want them to love just our planet, our everything about it. Some people say, oh, Mars, let's go to Mars. Isn't it great? No, every place on Mars is trying to kill you, right? Everything, the whole environment is designed to kill you, right? Our planet is designed to help us live, right? We just have to help our planet help us live. We have this glorious place. Right now it's a little foggy in San Francisco, but it's glorious. We want to live here. We want to be able to, for future generations to live here and not just survive, but to thrive. Our kids, right? Our kids.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
We are heading rapidly towards an hour, and I want to pull out an actionable insight, or just talk about this just for a couple of minutes. This notion of the Orphans in the Gold Rush book, and I don't want to pass by that too far without talking about how you have a chapter book that you were just asked to write with not a lot of specifications. It doesn't seem like something that you were passionate about. If I'm not, me as a podcaster, if I'm listening to this conversation, I'd go, hey, wait a minute, that sounds like a cool opportunity. Even if it is for a primarily educational market, getting the chance to write a chapter book, a fiction chapter book rooted in history, a history of your choosing. What a great opportunity. How did that happen?
Through my agent. She originally, I believe, an illustrator who is one of her clients, I'm not sure who, had done some illustration work for them, because these chapter books are illustrated, spot illustrations. And that project had gone very successfully. And so they came to her with a list of, first there were biographies, and then there were just historical fiction of different time periods. And they gave her a list and said, do you have any clients who would be interested in writing chapter books? Any of these on this list? And so she approached several of us and said, do you guys have any interest in writing in any of these topics? And when I saw that there was nothing with the gold rush, I was like, I don't have time to research another historical time period or person or anything. I don't have time to do that. So no, but if they're interested in a story set during the gold rush in San Francisco, I am prepared to write a story about that because I have already got all this background information and it would not take me very long to do that. So
awesome.
She went to them. They got back to her immediately and said, we would love a story about the gold rush in San Francisco. And at that point they said, we would like an outline. So then did a 10 chapter outline, and with, whatever plot points happening in each chapter, the little cliffhanger that would end each chapter, and sent it off to them. And they said, we love the outline. You have to be a little bit careful about gambling and drinking.
In a chapter
book. Makes sense, but also Gold Rush, San Francisco. Yeah, it's gonna. Those are pieces.
I guess I can remove the brothel too. Sorry.
I know. There was one where they encounter a lady on the street, and encountering a lady on the street in Gold Rush, San Francisco was not only unusual, but the lady that they would encounter on the street would be dressed very nicely. So I had to do a lot of research in that one little area, and I found a woman who played violin. She was French. She would play violin in the gambling houses, right? And get paid in gold for playing the violin because they were there was so little entertainment that they would pay people to do all kinds of things, right? To entertain these masses of men who had nothing better to do than to gamble and drink, right? So right. I found this woman who was a violinist, and so she was incorporated in this story, and she plays a major role as a nice person who ends up helping these kids, right? These two kids.
Yeah. Awesome.
Gambling and drinking, I had to really skirt the edges of that, and no mention of the brothels whatsoever. Because it's designed for 3rd through 5th graders, the chapter.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was really I had 2,000 words of back matter that laid out the whole business of what happened during that time period. And there was one word I used in there that I used the word gambling. But so if they got to the back matter, it'd be in there, but not in the main part of the story. But there are lots of really, their father gets shanghaied. Their mother dies of cholera on the way there on the boat.
Man, yeah.
You don't shy away from heavy stuff. That's the real world, but it is interesting.
Yeah, the life has got a lot of heavy stuff, and I think, kids need to be exposed to heavy stuff so that they know that they can get through it, right?
We've talked to Allie Malinenko on the podcast before, who specializes in kidlit horror and says exactly that. That's the whole point. You take them through something scary, but you end it with hope so that they know on the other side, they're capable, they can get through it. And here is sort of your map to do that. Here, it's practice, right?
Yes.
So
yes, you can be resourceful. You can think about what are my options.
Right.
You don't just roll over, curl up, and give up, right? Because you want to survive and you want to have a future that is filled with possibilities.
Yeah.
So getting through it is important. You gotta persevere. You gotta have hope.
That's right. A final thought or final question. What is the title of that book and why is it not Six Piece Nuggets?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. The title of the book, oh geez. I wasn't expecting to actually talk about this book, but I should have known. It's like San Francisco, the city built on golden dreams. I think that's the essence of the title. So it's the subtitle, The City Built on Golden Dreams. Shoot.
And we can take the specific part out if you want.
Change.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is with core knowledge is that any kid can go online once it's published. Any kid can go online and read it for free online.
That
if
is
you
cool.
want a hard copy, you have to pay for the hard copy. Any kid, it doesn't matter where you are, if you have access to the internet, you can read that book and learn about the gold rush. And so I really appreciate their values as far as spreading information to anyone, to give people access, right?
Yeah.
It's not all, well, you have to buy the book. You can't.
And it's so important, again, in these current times, right, to have actual, like, researched, hard information that is available for free. Like, you can have this. You don't have to, that's amazing.
I have to tell you, the fact checker for this book was phenomenal. She went through every tiny detail. And I have this piece where there is a woman who actually collected frogs and sold frogs to restaurants for eating. Okay, the California red leg frog, sold to restaurants so that she could earn a living. And so at a certain point, I have this child catching frogs, taking them to a restaurant, and then getting money for them. And she said, well, I'm not sure that she would have gotten $1 per frog. I think she would have gotten more like 50 cents per frog. But she said, I went down this rabbit hole of trying to find comparisons of menus during that time. And I had done the same thing, right? Looking at menus from the gold rush. And I didn't find a frog leg on the menu, but I knew that they ate them like crazy because they pretty much decimated the red-legged California frog population, in addition to all the birds on the Farallon Islands because they gathered their eggs. So the fact checking was unbelievable. And so I feel very confident that all of the books that they put out, all of the stuff that you will find in them are true. And I really appreciate that. They don't let things slide. If there was something that was not verifiable, they were like, well, we really have to like either not include it or to include it with a caveat that makes it clear that it's fiction and not non-fiction. So
wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, core knowledge, again, shouting them out. They do amazing work. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. So if you want to write those books.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
right. Let's check it out. We are like up and over the hour, and I just want to say we haven't even said thank you. Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, this has been just like, it's been so nice to catch up with you, but also to hear about like all of the intense research that you're doing and the amazing stories that you're weaving because of it, and all of the hope you're offering the world and the kids of the world, and like fostering the next generation. Like, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And everybody, look for her books coming out. They're coming out soon, March and September. Is that right?
March 3rd, 2026 is The Ocean's Heart. And then July, I don't think I have a specific day yet in July, but July 2026 for HeartLand, the
Amazing.
novel.
Okay, yes, check them both out. Keep them on your radar. Requests from the library. Do all of the things.
And then we look forward to your book in 2027, Oceanland. Just to round out the combo deal.
Yeah, amazing.
I'll get to work right now.